You felt something strange since you woke up today. It's not exactly pain, not exactly fear, but it's a constant presence, a quiet reminder that 2 years ago something was taken from you. And I'm not just talking about money. I'm talking about a structure, a trust, a foundation that was shaken by a betrayal, by a decision, or by a failure that to this day you're still trying to understand why it happened. You feel that since that time, you've been working 3 times as hard, pushing yourself with a discipline no one around you can grasp, and still, prosperity seems to be just around the corner, but it never quite steps through your door. You ask yourself if it was your mistake. You ask yourself why the flow stopped. You need to know the truth. The truth is that this emptiness you carry is not a hole in your destiny, but a forced cleansing you didn't ask to go through. What happened 2 years ago, that event that marked the start of a scarcity that seemed endless, was not a punishment, and it was definitely not an accident. It was a necessary emptying process. You were carrying weights that weren't yours, maintaining roots that led nowhere, and investing your energy in soil that would never bear fruit. What happened was a divine interruption to make you stop building on foundations that were rotting. I'm here to show you why that loss, that damage that stole your sleep for 730 days, was the price your soul paid for you to finally break free from a cycle that would have destroyed you if it continued. If you feel deep down that the pieces are finally starting to click into place, if you realize the exhaustion you've felt until now was actually a preparation for something greater, then you're ready for what comes next. I want you to make a small mark, a gesture of recognition. Type the number 888 down below. It's not about what that number means to the world. It's about what it means to you right now. It's the signal that you're accepting the reversal of the flow. If you feel your readiness is real, type the number 888, then turn your full attention back to me. You recognize these symptoms. You know the feeling of money slipping through your fingers, no matter how hard you try to hold it. You know the tiredness that sleep doesn't fix, the weight on your shoulders of carrying the responsibility for a future that seems stuck on hold. Maybe you've had recurring dreams, images of places you don't know, or the constant sense that something important was left behind. Attention! You need to prepare yourself now. I have prepared material for those who doubt their own calling from God and still do not have confirmation. Are you one of the chosen? We'll give you that clarity. These are the 7 signs of the language of the calling, marks of God in the story of every chosen one, so you can reread your story and recognize the purpose sealed over you before the foundation of the world. Stop calling coincidence what is actually a calling. Stop silencing the sacred restlessness. Stop postponing the answer you feel. Your window is closing, and a chosen one who does not recognize the calling does not walk in purpose. More than 10,000 people have already read the 7 signs and received the conviction they had been seeking for years. They were just like you. They felt something no one understood. They lived in silent doubt, and they discovered it was real. And it had a name. The offer is open only this month. Access the link in the pinned comment now, before doubt steals another year from your calling. You notice the people around you seem to flow with ease, while you have to fight for every crumb. You feel a growing distance between who you were before that loss and who you've become since. But clarity starts here. These symptoms are not signs that you're losing your ability to thrive. They are signs that you are being calibrated for a level of management that, before, you wouldn't have had the maturity to handle. The loss 2 years ago was the pruning of a tree that needed to grow in a different direction. Your doubled effort is not wasted. It is the silent training of a steward who soon will have much more under his care than what was taken from him. You are not stagnant. You are being prepared. The barn was emptied so the new harvest wouldn't mix with the dust of the past. You are in the middle of a transition, and what is coming is the restoration of a flow that will now be anchored in a purpose you finally understand. The past no longer defines your ceiling, because what you learned in the silence of scarcity is worth more than all the gold you lost. What you lived through was not a defeat. It was the necessary demolition of a building that could never have held the glory you are about to inhabit. Every cent that left, every opportunity that seemed to slip away, every door that slammed shut was to ensure you wouldn't be in a place that no longer belongs to you. You are discovering that your security never came from what was in your bank account, but from the unshakable connection to your own calling. That's why, no matter how hard it's been, you never gave up, you never stopped. You're still here, seeking to understand the nature of this game you've been called to play on a board that has completely changed shape and substance. Now, we are about to go one layer deeper to understand how this mindset of loss has been dictating your decisions without you realizing it, and how to flip that switch once and for all. Be ready, because the layer that reveals the source of your strength is just below. You have been operating under the shadow of a financial ghost, believing that your responsibility now is to make up for what was taken 2 years ago. That is the fundamental flaw. You walk with the mind of someone still trying to recover what they lost, acting like someone who still possesses the treasure that was ripped away. This mindset creates a cycle of exhaustion, where you push yourself twice as hard, but the energy you emit is that of scarcity, not abundance. When you operate trying desperately to fill a hole, you end up attracting more emptiness. You've become a guard of ruins instead of an architect of the future. The trap is in believing that your identity was diminished by the event, when in truth the event only exposed where your security was anchored. You did not lose your value. You lost a crutch that kept you from walking on your own 2 feet, but your habit of looking back is still what blocks your next step. Imagine for a moment the image of a great barn that needs to be renovated for a harvest that will surpass any you have ever seen. If you keep the barn full of old, moldy grain that is no longer fit for planting, where will you put the new seed? The emptying was not a punishment, it was a preparation. That loss, which to the world looked like a financial tragedy, was the act of removing what was occupying the space meant for your new cycle. You live under the illusion that scarcity is a permanent state, when in truth it was only a period of cleaning. The harvest that is reserved for you demands a new structure, soil that is not saturated by attachment to what was taken. You are trying to keep the barn clean in a way that leaves you tired, but the secret of future abundance is not in guarding what remains. It is in preparing the space for what is coming. The illusion that you are a man or woman in lack is what prevents the new harvest from finding a place. Let this recognition seal the spot where the truth has just landed. The act of typing these 3 words makes the testimony permanent in your personal record. Type now, and then come straight back to me. Now that you have accepted that the emptiness was actually a preparation, we enter the phase of spiritual management. This demands a radical shift in posture. You need to stop trying to control the flow as if you were still operating in the desperation of 2 years ago. Letting go of control does not mean passivity, but a strategic surrender. It is understanding that you are not the owner of the resources, but the steward of the purpose. When you take off the weight of needing to be the absolute provider of your own survival, you release a frequency of clarity that will attract exactly the connections and opportunities needed for the next stage. The past no longer belongs to you. It is a debt that life has already paid in lessons you are still processing. Stop trying to make the harvest happen in the timing of your fear. Spiritual management happens when you trust that the new harvest is already being prepared, and your current role is simply to keep the barn in order, ready, without the dust of remorse or the anxiety of scarcity. You no longer need to fight against what is gone. You need to start living from the truth of what is coming. What you let go of was what was keeping you anchored in a harbor that no longer offers safety. And now that you are in open waters, the only way to navigate is through trust, not brute force. Your prosperity will not return the way you expect, because it is not a restitution, it is an expansion. If something inside you recognizes the precision of this revelation, if the truth about what happened 2 years ago finally rang like a bell inside your chest, let your gesture of agreement be your wordless amen. It is not about a metric, not about numbers on a screen. It is about a seal of recognition that what was named here was named with the authority of one who understands the nature of your process. When you leave this small gesture of presence, you are only confirming that the message has found its destination, that the dust has settled, and that what was hidden is now light. There is, however, a specific person who needs to hear these exact words tonight. Think now of the face of someone you know, someone who has shown a tiredness that doesn't seem to come from the body, someone who has been silently working harder than everyone around them, yet still feels like they're hitting an invisible wall. That person's face came to your mind as I was speaking. It was no accident. Send this content to her. The way this message reached you was through an invisible appointment, and the role you now play is that of a messenger. Deliver this clarity to someone who is living the same dark night you were crossing, because restoration does not happen only for the individual. It happens for the collective that is ready to be awakened. Take a deep breath now, because we are reaching the peak of this recognition. Before this moment fades, before routine tries to take back control, I need you to firm your position. Do not type it as a wish, do not type it as a request, and certainly do not type it out of hope. Type it as a confirmation, as a decree from someone who has accepted their own identity in the middle of the storm. The agreement formed between the higher plane and your listening over the last tens of minutes is the foundation upon which your next season of life will be built. Write it slowly. Feel every letter. Feel the truth of it settling into your bones, because the act of recording it is the way to anchor your new reality in the physical plane. You are committed to the truth that now runs through your life. You are commissioned to manage the resources that are about to be placed in your hands with the wisdom that scarcity taught you. You are sent to be, in the midst of your environment, the living proof that nothing that was lost was wasted. Rather, it was preparation. Your time of silent trial served to clear away what was not yours, to push away what was not sustainable, and to prepare the barn for the harvest you could never have imagined. You need to understand deeply that what happened 2 years ago, that loss that seemed like an abyss, was not a miscalculation, but a course correction necessary for you to stop investing your vital energy into dry wells. That financial betrayal, that move that seemed to take everything from your hands, was in fact the way life removed the excess weight to allow you to rise to a higher level of operation. For a long time, you were trying to sustain a structure that was no longer allowed to grow, and the discomfort you feel when you look back is just the memory of the moment your old security was dismantled, so that something new, something that truly matches who you have become, could be built. If you feel that your intuition in recent months has been pointing to a new way of managing not just your money, but your very peace, know that this clarity is the first sign that restoration is already underway, and that the flow which seems stagnant is only gathering force for a new entry. When you notice that your anxiety has decreased, even if your bank account does not yet reflect your full potential, you are living in the state of trust that precedes manifestation. Many around you still operate under fear, still try to hold the ropes of boats that have already sunk, but you have been called to let go. And if you feel, in the innermost part of your being, that this message arrived at the exact moment you were ready to drop the posture of victim and take on that of master of your own financial destiny, I want you to do something simple. That number in its writing is not just a code. It is the frequency of reversal, the mathematical symbol of infinity being brought into your practical reality. Your decision to type the 888 is your contract with the new, the confirmation that you stopped looking at the loss and started seeing the harvest. Type 888 and then return immediately to our flow of recognition. What you have been living through, this tiredness that sleep doesn't cure, this feeling that the days are long but the results are short, is the physical proof that you were trying to carry a load that no longer belonged to you. For 2 years, you lived under the weight of an emotional debt that manifested as a material loss. But the truth is that your value was never measured by what was taken from you, but by how you stood up after the storm. Now, look at your feet. You are on solid ground. The betrayal you suffered, the mismanagement someone committed with your resources, all of it served to teach you to discern where you place your trust, and more importantly, where you place your hope. You did not lose everything. You lost the illusion that security came from the outside. And that lesson, though painful, is the foundation of any fortune that truly lasts. Notice that even in the darkest moments, there was a voice, a small whisper inside you, telling you not to give up, telling you this was not the end. That whisper is your connection to real abundance, the kind that cannot be stolen, the kind that does not depend on others. Let this recognition transform into a seal of presence. By typing "I am here," you are declaring that you are no longer running from your own story, no longer hiding behind the pain of 2 years ago. You are here, present, aware, ready for the management of what is coming. Type it, and then come with me to the deepest layer of this revelation. When we understand that scarcity is actually a form of protection against investing in wrong directions, our heart calms down. You don't need to desperately search for ways to recover what was lost, because what was lost fulfilled its role of cleansing. What you need to do now is change your posture. The owner of the barn does not live worried about last year's harvest. He prepares the soil for the next one. Your financial field now is clean. What was taken 2 years ago opened space for something so much greater that if I told you now, you would probably doubt it, because you're still attached to the logic of scarcity. But what is coming is not something you will build alone. It is something you will reap, because you kept your integrity during the scarcity. If you feel that this message confirmed what your spirit was already whispering, let your like be your wordless amen. It is not about metrics. It is about agreeing with the truth that was exposed here. It is your signal, your silent gesture, that you recognize this outpouring was not a coincidence, but a release of a burden you no longer need to carry. There is someone, a specific person who appeared in your mind as we spoke. Someone you know has been working exhaustively, someone carrying a heavy silence about finances and seems to be losing hope. Send this message to that person, not as a suggestion, but as support, a release of a burden they also need to let go of in order to finally see the door that is already open for them. You carry the mark of someone who, 2 years ago, felt the ground open up when what was supposed to be your financial security was drained, not by accident, but by an engineering of losses that seemed designed to test you to the limit. You still feel the pulse of that financial betrayal, the money that vanished, leaving a trail of doubt about your own ability to discern. But listen carefully, because what an accountant admitted about the flow of resources is not about bank failures. It is about the energetic cleansing you needed to go through to stop building on foundations of sand. If you feel that this cycle still traps you, if there is a tightness in your chest every time you look at what was lost, understand that scarcity was the tool used to empty your barn. Typing these 3 digits is your way of saying that the blockage flow is being reversed. It is your yes to the harvest that can only enter where nothing from the past is stored anymore. Write 888 and return immediately to me. The most common symptom of this process is the feeling that no matter how hard you work, money seems to have an invisible drain. You wake up exhausted, with dreams that blur into reality, feeling like you're swimming against a current that never stops. That is the diagnosis of the failure. You have been operating with the mindset of someone still trying to protect what they lost, instead of aligning with the abundance that is trying to come in. You are trying to keep the barn locked, but for the new crop to come in, the old must be completely removed. It was not a mistake, it was a preparation. Your exhaustion does not come from the work you do, but from the resistance to accepting that money did not leave because of your incompetence, but to create the necessary space for your next phase. Imagine a barn that was full of old grain, starting to rot. You fought to keep it there, not realizing the rot was contaminating the air you breathed. The loss 2 years ago was the act of opening the doors of that barn so the wind could clear it all out. You feel in scarcity because you look at the empty space, not seeing that it is now ready to receive something 100 times more valuable. Let this declaration establish your presence in the new cycle. Type these words and come right back. The secret no one tells you is that money, when treated as an end, is a cruel master, but when treated as a resource for exchange, it obeys the flow of your clarity. You no longer need to fight against what was taken. Let go of control. The spiritual management of your prosperity begins the moment you stop looking at what was subtracted and start watching the hand that, at this very moment, is preparing the next move. You did not lose your future. You were simply stripped of a structure that could not contain what is coming. What you lived through was a necessary desert, a proof that your identity does not reside in your bank account, but in the ability to stand when everything visible disappeared. Now the silence you have kept begins to be filled by a new frequency, one that no longer allows the fear of lack to dictate the size of your next steps. You are being guided out of that zone of exhaustion, not because you finally worked harder, but because you finally stopped trying to hold on to what had already left. The door is open, and the light crossing the threshold is not the same as 2 years ago. It is a light that does not blind, but illuminates exactly where you should step. Every thought of scarcity that arises from today onward is just an echo of a shadow that no longer has power over your present reality. What was done to your money was a detour, but what is being done to your consciousness now is a permanent restoration. If you felt the weight of the previous words, know that this clarity is not a coincidence, but a reunion. If anything in this entire revelation confirmed what your spirit was already whispering in the silent early mornings, allow your amen to be translated into a wordless gesture, a simple movement that seals your agreement with the truth that was spoken. It is not about metrics. It is about recognizing that your story of loss has finally found an ending, making way for a new chapter where scarcity has no permanent seat. There is someone now, very close to you, who also carries this invisible exhaustion. Someone who worked tirelessly only to see their sweat turn to dust. Someone who holds a deep disappointment from 2 years ago and, out of fear, stopped looking at the horizon. That person's face just came to your mind, not by coincidence, but by a call. Send this content to her, not as a casual suggestion, but as a necessary delivery. She needs to know that what was taken was not the end of her provision, but only the removal of an obstacle that was preventing a much greater harvest. Be the channel of this message, because what you received here was a commitment to restoration that begins with your own movement of care for another. Before we close this cycle, there is one last statement you must engrave in your consciousness. Do not type it as a request, nor as a distant hope. Type it as a confirmation that you have understood your role in what is coming. This phrase is the final seal of your transition. Your spirit knows that the trial is over and that the management of your life now enters a level of protection you did not know before. Let your fingers register this truth, fixing your identity on the new ground you are stepping onto. You are committed. You are commissioned. You are sent. From today, your vision is no longer held back by your bank account, but guided by the purpose that was purified by the pruning. What you lost has already been replaced in the form of wisdom, and what is coming will be managed with the hand of one who no longer fears lack. At this moment, in all parts of the world, other people are receiving exactly this same recognition. You are part of a silent awakening, a movement of souls who decided to stop fighting the flow and started walking on water. You are not alone on this journey, and your peace from now on will be the proof that you finally understood the game. Attention! You need to prepare yourself now. I have prepared material for those who doubt their own calling from God and still do not have confirmation. Are you one of the chosen? We'll give you that clarity. These are the 7 signs of the language of the calling, marks of God in the story of every chosen one, so you can reread your story and recognize the purpose sealed over you before the foundation of the world. Stop calling coincidence what is actually a calling. Stop silencing the sacred restlessness. Stop postponing the answer you feel. Your window is closing, and a chosen one who does not recognize the calling does not walk in purpose. More than 10,000 people have already read the 7 signs and received the conviction they had been seeking for years. They were just like you. They felt something no one understood. They lived in silent doubt, and they discovered it was real. And it had a name. The offer is open only this month. Access the link in the pinned comment now before doubt steals another year from your calling.